Hello there. Welcome to video 123 from Sumit Academy. I do hope that you have subscribed to my channel. Do subscribe now so that you do not miss out on my previous or future videos. And do remember to like and share this video too. And if you want to get in touch, I shall always be available at sumitacademy20@gmail.com. To ease your way to navigate my YouTube channel, here is a quick look at all the 123 videos available on my channel, listed under the playlists in which they are categorized. Have a look. I do hope that you have seen my earlier videos on the various aspects of government and governance and the implementation of good governance in India. In this video, we shall have a look at the concept of public service delivery in India, examine the different aspects of public service delivery, and understand the factors promoting or hindering it. We shall also look at a possible solution to increase effectiveness, public participation, and result-oriented implementation of public service delivery, in line with the idea of good governance. The British political scientist William Hardy Wickwar had once said that what makes the public services public is the general feeling that we cannot live our private lives without them if we are to make the most of our material civilization. This means that our material civilization will prove unsustainable unless public services secure the economic and social rights to enable all to participate in it. In this process, it gives expression to a public service that is rooted in collective, cooperative, and democratic values. Let us have a brief look at the history of this concept. During the 1950s and the 1960s, many newly independent countries started providing public services to its citizens, such as water, gas, electricity, and healthcare. But they did not have the capability of delivering them. As a result, they became overburdened and expectations were made of the private sector to contribute in the provisions of public services. The governance crisis, due to a lack of capacity in providing these services, led to a period of transition where the private sector was encouraged to collaborate or undertake the complete task of delivering public services, with the governments still retaining the major responsibility. In countries like the USA and the UK, private provision of public services is significant, although it is strongly regulated by government. In India, local governments are responsible for overseeing the provision of public services, but governance is weak. The reason lies in the historical impact of a landlord system controlling local governance under the colonial land tenure institutions. The public administration during the colonial period was to facilitate governance in accordance with British interests and did not focus on service delivery or empowerment for the poor of India. The administration was not accountable to the Indian people and remained distant from the needs of the general public, focusing more on facilitating British trade, consolidating British rule in India, and perpetuating colonial ethos. This led to the establishment of an administrative culture which was detached from the people and lacked accountability and transparency towards the citizens of this country. After independence, this administrative culture has been a major hurdle in achieving effectiveness of public services for overall national development. Past institutional practices impact the present outcomes in public service delivery in our country. After independence, economic growth and social development became the priority for the government. There was a need to uplift the morale of the masses that had long been under the exploitative yoke of colonial rule. The idea of justice, equality, and fraternity necessitated basic human dignity that could be achieved only through facilitating the availability of essentials through the common citizen to clothe and feed the deprived masses in the furthest corners of the country. Having introduced the subject and having seen the historical perspective, let us now try and pinpoint the definition of the term public service. Well, public services are defined as those services which are mainly or completely funded by taxation. It includes areas of central and state government, health, education, defense, justice, home affairs, and non-commercial semi-state organizations. Certain established activities may be contracted out operationally to private firms, but the delivery of such services may continue to be funded from taxation and remain governed by public service criteria. So, how do public services differ from private sector services? There are differences in the objective and constraints of public and private sector. Public services do not normally operate for financial profit or require an immediate payment for goods and services prior to delivery. If public services are charged for, then they are usually not sold at commercial prices to produce profits, and the charges may be subsidized for social policy reasons. Being of a non-commercial character, public services are free of market competition. Equitable treatment, allocation of resources according to need, fairness, and equity are most important for public service. On the other hand, in the private sector, efficiency and cost effectiveness are the key elements. Their primary obligation is to provide financial returns to their shareholders. They are not required to maintain such services to geographically and financially disadvantaged groups, which are non-viable to the company. Our next question is as to what is the nature of the relationship between the service provider and the recipient of those public services. The provider-customer relationship in public service is indirect by nature, as the customer's ability to pay does not determine the demand. Market discipline of price control does not apply directly. However, funding from the state budget makes the mismatches in demand and supply a persistent problem. In private agencies, the relationship between the service provider and the customer is normally direct. Therefore, all levels of sales express the satisfaction of the customer. In other words, the logic of demand or satisfaction and provider incentive is directly related. Unlike in the case of the private sector, an increase in demand in the public sector may be very unwelcome, as it means more pressure on staff and facilities without a proportionate increase in budget. The problem of excess demand resulting in waiting customers and rationing of supplies decreases the motivation to improve quality. Public services cater to low-income consumers who do not have much choice in the market. They get trapped in a monopolistic system for essential services like healthcare, education, or social security benefits. Such customers often form very low expectations for service quality. So, are users of public services clients, customers, consumers, or are they just citizens? You see, the term customer is generally used to explain this relationship between the service provider and the service recipient. However, public service delivery is characterized by monopolistic and involuntary or mandatory nature of any service relationships, which limits the application of the concept of customer choice. The term consumer is therefore used to describe the user or recipient of public services because of the lesser implication to exchange of cash for goods and services. The concept of citizens is more useful in describing the position of a service recipient, but it seeks equity and demand from the government. But this term is more appropriate in understanding both the mutual rights and responsibilities of the service provider user relationship. Citizenship rights include the exercise of choice through participation in the political processes. Citizens who do not use a particular service may also have an interest in the cost and efficiency of public service provision and may also participate in the process of public service delivery policy making. Some services, like immigration, are availed specifically by non-citizen users. Now, what are the characteristics of public service delivery? The characteristics of public service delivery are unique as compared to market-oriented organizations and private enterprises. Remuneration or motivation for financial gain is delinked from the level of satisfaction of the clients. Mostly, such services include delivery of goods like food grains, books, and LPG, for which standardization is possible, which may enable the client to assess quality and express their grievance. Other public services are intangible, where it is difficult to set a standard and judge the service quality objectively, depending on the degree of ease or harassment in access, time of delivery, hidden costs like bribes, and ambience, attitude, and behavior of the service provider. The level of public trust can be assessed by how much people trust the credibility, leadership, and responsiveness of a service. What is the possible impact of the WTO's GATS, that is, the General Agreement on Trade in Services? You see, accountable use of pro-poor policies by the government can improve its legitimacy as custodian of public responsibility. However, expansion of pro-poor policies in developing countries like India is challenged by the World Trade Organization's General Agreement on Trade in Services, which seeks to establish an increasingly open market for all types of services. GATS excludes from its coverage all services provided through governmental authority. But the catch here is that only such services which are not provided by commercial or competitive suppliers can avail exception from GATS. Thus, according to WTO, the state should provide only what private business does not want to provide. It would reduce the role of public service to only providing a safety net and core classic public goods, such as defense and the judiciary. Such narrow role of state will lead to inequitable consequences. Public responsibility is associated greatly with service such as financing, providing or regulating the services that contribute to health and education outcomes. If the scope of governmental authority is taken to be limited to delivery of only basic public goods in which the market is not interested, it would certainly undermine public good, and the government would be perceived as retreating from its responsibility. Next, let us see the role of bureaucracy in public service delivery. The pre-independence legacy of bureaucracy in India is defined by a disenchanted relationship between the bureaucracy and the citizen. Since independence, growth of welfare activities have led to the expansion of bureaucracy for undertaking developmental tasks to uplift the socio-economic status of the citizen. Yet, the responsiveness of India's bureaucracy towards the citizen has remained discouraging, as the obligation in delivering public services to the citizens is not well understood by this ruling class. The state has undertaken interventions for bringing social transformation post independence. Yet, desired results have not been achieved in terms of real outcome for the citizens. After independence, poverty elevation programs, employment generation, providing basic infrastructure facilities and services like health, education, and transportation have become priority areas for public spending. The public distribution system caters for providing essential provisions like food grains, oil, sugar, etc. to the deprived masses at low rates. The poor are dependent on these services for their survival and for breaking the vicious circle of poverty. Thus, these services are imperative for human development. Administrative reforms have been attempted with an aim to create an honest, efficient, and result oriented public service which is available at the disposal of the government for the service of the people. With further development in concepts of public administration, the good governance model gained importance in the delivery of public services, with the citizens now perceived not as consumers but as customers of public services. A rights-based model gained importance, and emphasis was laid on accountability and transparency in public services. With the technology and information revolution, e-governance and alternative methods for delivery of public services are being developed. Public services delivery is, however, severely ailing due to shortcomings of the bureaucratic system and political malpractices. PDS is often seen as inefficient and corrupt due to erratic delivery of food stocks and poor quality of food grains. Fair price shops have become hubs of corruption. In a joint survey by Transparency International India and Center for Media Studies in 2008, it was discovered that BPL households had to pay a staggering amount of $177 million. That is more than 13 billion rupees as bribes in a single year of 2007 in order to avail basic public services such as PDS, water supply, electricity, education, and health facilities. Let's move on to our next question. What is the importance of good governance in public service delivery? The expectations of the citizens to enjoy timely and corruption-free public service delivery can only be achieved through adoption of the good governance model. Problems in governance of developing states range from corruption, inappropriate allocation of resources, rent seeking, inefficient revenue systems, and weak delivery of vital public services. Thus, the governance is dysfunctional and the results are unsatisfactory. As a result, people's trust in the performance of public sector for delivery of public services that are in accordance with preference of citizens is weak. This has led to pessimism in citizens about the government. To address this concern, results-based management of governance, providing quality services in the least cost manner. In other words, good governance is needed. And here I want to remind you to have a look at my earlier video on good governance too. Good governance attempts to improve the efficiency and equity of public services and strengthen institutions of accountability in governance. It seeks to empower citizens to demand accountability for results from their government. Globalization, localization, and information revolution are important factors in this process. It seeks efficient governance along with effective government and is based on a system of checks and balances in the form of rewards and sanctions. The efficacy of the government is determined by the extent to which public programs meet the set goals. Efficiency is said to exist if public services of a particular quality is being delivered by the government in a cost-effective manner. The orientation of the government towards alternate service delivery helps to understand whether the access to public services is being expanded through appropriate partnership or contractual relationships within and beyond government. It is important to see which activities or programs could be outsourced, in whole or in part, to the private or voluntary sectors. Apart from cost effectiveness, it is also important to judge whether the public service serves money's worth. The stakeholders can assess if the public funds are being used in ways that ensure the best value for the general public. Effectiveness in selected sectors is evaluated by government and stakeholders to initiate reforms in the requisite areas of governance. To achieve good governance, economic and governance reforms have been implemented in India, whereby public sectors are being restructured in order to deal with the twin problems of indebtedness and growing citizen disenchantment with government. Some parameters can help to measure the quality of good governance in a state or sector by assessing the ability of government to achieve citizen participation, economic stability, social development, and economic management. Political transparency and a voice for all citizens in governance indicates citizen participation and helps to measure political freedom and political stability. The extent to which government provides effective public services efficiently indicates judicial and bureaucratic efficiency and the absence of corruption. Several measures of human development and equitable distribution of income indicate how the government promotes the health and well-being of its citizens. The government's contribution in creating a favorable climate for stable economic growth is measured by the outward orientation of economy, independence of the central bank, and an inverted debt GDP ratio. Our next question is, what are the factors promoting public service delivery in India? To transform public service bureaucracies, which are unresponsive, into a user-focused governance instrument for delivery of public services with a right-based approach, has been taken many forms in India. The first of these is decentralization, which we have already studied in one of my earlier videos. The other factors are Citizens' Charter, e-governance as an enabling tool for good governance, right to information, and corporate social responsibility. Now, since I have already uploaded separate videos on all these subjects, you may like to have a look at all my videos on polity and governance. Like in countries such as Belgium, Canada, France, Portugal, Spain, UK, and USA, India too follows a rights-based approach to public service delivery. Some of the common public services which are to be provided within a stipulated period as a right under the Public Services Act includes issuing caste, birth, marriage, and domicile certificates, electricity connections, voters' cards, ration cards, copies of land record, etc. Rights-based acts for public service in India are based on two types of approaches. One is the motivation-centered approach adopted by Delhi, where the amount of penalty for the officials is less. Compensation amount is also not set, and incentive-based actions are more. The other approach is adopted by states like Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan, where the emphasis on penalties is more as compared to incentives. Now, even though I have uploaded separate videos on each topic, to keep continuity here, let us study these briefly. The first is Citizens' Charter. More than 600 citizens' charters have so far been introduced by many state governments. Yet many of these only provide information about their functions and lack any guidelines on accountability. Therefore, a redressal system was introduced in 2011 called the Citizens Charter Bill, the right of citizens for time-bound delivery of goods and services and redressal of their grievances. The main principles of this charter focus on improving the quality of services, valuing taxpayers' money, setting out standards for delivery, and a redressal mechanism if these standards are not met. It aims to ensure accountability of individuals and organizations for maintaining the standard in services and increasing the transparency of rules, procedures, and schemes for citizens. In addition, it included expectations from the clients and obligations of the users. Next is e-governance. If you have seen my earlier video on this, you will know that e-governance is a tool for enhanced efficiency of a government organization. It envisages creation of a single window facility for accessing government services at lower levels of governance, such as at the district and village level. It attempts to provide an interface that is user-friendly, affordable, cost-effective, fast and efficient to link the government and the public. The National Rural Health Mission (NHRM), launched in 2006, has been greatly strengthened by e-governance. Use of Health Management Information System (HMIS) and Mother and Child Tracking System (MCTS) has contributed to intensifying the reach of public health services and Integrated Child Development Scheme (ICDS) in rural India. Next, we have right to information, and once again I refer you to my earlier videos on RTI. Work culture in the Indian government is influenced by perpetuation of colonial laws. The Indian Evidence Act 1872, the Official Secrets Act 1923, and the Civil Services Conduct Rules have contributed to a culture of government confidentiality in which disclosure is the exception and secrecy the norm. The RTI Act is perceived as a major achievement of good governance initiative in the field of public service delivery system in the country. Previously, instead of being seen as bearer of rights, the citizen was seen as a beneficiary of state goods and services. The RTI Act has enabled citizens to challenge this adverse power dynamic. The citizens, as bearers of right to question the government, can seek information on its activities. It also helps the government to build trust with the public by bringing transparency in its interactions with the people. RTI thus acts as a social accountability tool and strengthens the delivery of public services and has brought greater focus to issues of transparency and accountability in the delivery of social sector programs. Now, let's move on to the limitations for public service delivery. Public service delivery is vital for the poor. However, lack of education, low level of awareness of the service recipients, communication gap between service providers and recipients, pessimism about government and the public services, low expectations, and inability to assess the quality of service delivered due to absence of knowledge of their entitlement all adversely affect the delivery of services to the poor in India. The quality of services delivered is impacted by lack of empowerment and inability to articulate their grievances. A large portion of rural public service recipients are either unaware of grievance redressal mechanisms or do not resort to a formal complaint even if they know about it. Experiences in several developing countries indicate that service delivery to the poor largely fails, leading to significantly poor outcome for the deprived sections. Further, limitations in public service delivery are observed in terms of a lack of uniformity in services delivered. A high level of subjectivity in delivery of services, along with low levels of social networking among the poor, has added to such differential outcome. Services which are targeted towards the deprived sections are likely to be less efficient and more prone to corruption due to low level of interest articulation by the poor. On the other hand, public services also fail in addressing diversity in requirements of the recipients. Services are delivered in packages that are standardized, as contrary to the diverse needs of the target group, due to wide diversity in their socio-economic status and locality. Such difference in the understanding between the clients and the service providers affects the services adversely. For example, male workers working for the women self-help groups. There is high possibility of failure in services involving technical and professional knowledge. Engineering and health-related service are more likely to fail compared to delivery of basic public goods because expertise of the persons serving those areas is quite inadequate while the supervision is negligible. Moreover, the ownership of public service institutions and the socio-economic status of service providers is very different from the people they serve. The service providers are from better socio-economic background, which enhances the psychological barrier. Other problems are lack of focus on what public service to deliver, lack of professional competency to effectively deliver, lack of accountability and transparency, lack of responsiveness, and lack of participation by the stakeholders. Now, let us have a look at what are the measures to improve delivery of public services. Salaries of public servants forms the largest component of public spending on services. Therefore, linking a part of their salary to objective measures of individual and organizational performance can improve the delivery of public services. By adopting a performance-based bonus payment, a cost-effective incentive can be provided for improving performance. At present, while salaries are high, it is not dependent on any evaluation of their performance. Thus, the incentive for good performance is absent. Positive results have been observed in Andhra Pradesh by use of a small monetary bonus for teachers in proportion to average improvement in student performance. By restructuring the contractual arrangements of employment, where job renewal is made subject to satisfactory report of performance by administrators and the community, better public service delivery can be assured. Improving local control over employment in public service can provide better incentive for service providers as well as greater empowerment of communities to customize spending according to local priorities. By increasing the role played by private schools, clinics, and other services, especially in the backward areas, direct empowerment of individuals can be achieved along with improved service delivery. Now, one such method may be by directly issuing health and educational grants in the form of vouchers to target groups. These can be redeemed at a recognized school or clinic, which will link the private sector with effective public service delivery. The World Bank study, Fiscal Decentralization to Rural Governments, has also made some recommendations which are worth considering for effective public services in India. Some of these recommendations are clarifying expenditure assignments, consolidating schemes, enhancing panchayat resources, redesigning transfers, creating information systems on local finances, and improving accountability. Other possible solutions can be private provision of public services, devolution to local government, electronic delivery of public services, citizens' charter, stakeholders' participation, voluntary disclosure of certain information, training for capacity building, reach out campaigns, performance management framework, and public perception studies. To conclude, we may say that the relevance of public service delivery in India is well understood, but there is more focus on procedures rather than outcomes. So procedural compliance is contrasted by little attention to whether or not the existing systems and processes are able to facilitate the efficient delivery of services. According to the World Bank's initial study titled Overview of Rural Decentralization in India, India is among the best performers on political decentralization, but ranks in the middle on fiscal decentralization and close to last on the administrative dimension. Moreover, accountability is limited at local levels. Contrary to the needs of rural empowerment and social justice, disadvantaged groups find less representation in local elected bodies. The roles and functions of the rural local governments lack clarity, while a monitoring system needs to be developed. A second study by the World Bank highlighted the mismatch between the policy objectives, accountability, and current practices. Only a small number of sectors in health, education, drinking water, and sanitation and employment programs have been devolved to rural governments and panchayats. Reform is also needed in urban decentralization. There has been lack of effective mechanisms for FPS dealers and owners' accountability. As per a survey conducted in 6 different states, a large number of PDS customers, 60 to 80%, are not even aware of how and where to complain. Even among those who know, 80 to 90% never complain. Even after lodging a complaint, there is no visible improvement in the quality of the system. Positive trends have been observed with the transfer of responsibility of public service delivery operations from third-party, individual or organization to joint initiatives owned by beneficiaries and operated by their representatives. This creates a better system of checks and balances which reduces the siphoning of resources and other malpractices. Replication of such good practice is viable in regions and districts that have a large concentration of beneficiaries of the PDS. Supplementary nutrition program in ICDS has shown positive use of ICD in linking benefit to children. Neonatal care in public health system by using community knowledge has shown encouraging success. Inclusive growth can be broadened by improving the effectiveness of spending to ensure budgetary increase for health and education, done with increased accountability and performance. Providing incentives for performance will reduce corruption in government employees. A combination of different approaches, such as short route accountability with performance incentives and local community empowerment, will be most effective in the Indian context, especially in backward and underperforming states. Well, that's all from me in this video. This video is based on information freely available on the internet. No originality is claimed for the same. The intention of this video is only to prepare candidates for answering examination questions on the subject. Do like and share this video and do subscribe to my channel now so that you do not miss out on my previous and future videos. And if you want to drop in a line, I shall always be available at sumitacademy20@gmail.com. Till later then, cheerio.